The Atari ST. These days more famous for not being an Amiga 500, but I think there's more to this machine than meets the eye. I bought this for €30, it has problems, and included this monitor. So why don't you come along with me as we try and work out if we can fix it and learn a little bit more about this cracking little machine. My name is Jess B. This is my tech department. Los geht's! The Atari ST has one of my favourite backstories. Atari's rivalry with Commodore and the Amiga is well documented, and you'll find plenty of videos on the subject here on YouTube. But in short, Atari had the Amiga chipset, lost it, tried to buy it back, lost it to Commodore, and the new Atari boss Jack Tramiel had the Atari ST designed in just 5 months to debut at the CES show in Las Vegas, way back in January 1985. The Amiga wouldn't make its first appearance until August of that year, and even then it was in very small quantities. Jack had also sued Commodore over the Amiga, which slowed down the machine's development a little bit. So the Atari ST was designed in record time, just to spite Commodore. I love that. Spite is just one aspect of the ST's design. Based on the Motorola 68000 processor, Jack also had his eyes on the Apple Macintosh, which released that previous year. It featured the same CPU, and so the ST could be said to happily mix it with the original Mac for a fraction of the price. Our machine is the later 1040 STfm. Unlike the original 520s, this machine has its disk drive and power supply built in, making it a very nice, pleasing wedge shape to look at. There are connections for modem, printer, external hard disk, external floppy disk, and a monitor out port that allows us to plug in not just a high-res monochrome monitor, but also a low and medium-res color monitor. There's also a television out part as well, which is part of the FM. The other thing it has is built-in MIDI ports, which the ST is famous for, and a lot of our music software like Cubase began on the Atari ST. Underneath there are the usual joystick ports, which you can either love or hate, but either way, that's our Atari ST. Now I bought this for just €30 and it came with the high-res monochrome monitor. I think it belonged to a doctor of some kind, and he was interested in programming because that's the software I have that came with the machine, just your basic. It's in ridiculously good condition, and I'm fairly certain no one has actually been in this machine. At some point though, I'm sure his kids must have used it because there are stickers on the monitor, and even the mouse has a sticker of a mouse on it. Yay! Nonetheless, let's power the machine on and see if it actually works, because I believe it's been stood for a while. So, let's plug in the monitor into that very annoying port at the back, switch it on, and away we go. Well, the good news is it immediately springs to life. Now, there's no disk in the drive, so I'm going to assume it's going to go through to GEM, the built-in operating system on the Atari ST. It's just looking for that drive, and eventually we'll come into GEM. With GEM on the screen, we have a problem. Although it's loaded up nicely and it's obviously in German, there are dots on the screen. That can only indicate one thing, at least as far as the service manual tells me. We have a memory problem or an MMU, memory management unit problem. I suspect it's memory. One or more of our little RAM ICs is not well, and although the computer can boot, well, this little pattern definitely is causing issues. Other than that though, we can see we're in TOS, and it doesn't actually give a version number, which is interesting. So how do we fix this machine? Well, we're going to have to tear it down. Now there are screws everywhere on this machine. The 3 at the front are fairly short. In fact, let's speed this up and get into that case. Well, I wasn't wrong when I said it had one careful owner. It turns out our factory warranty seal was still intact, so no one's ever been in this machine. Well, that's a bonus. But still, I feel kind of bad breaking the sticker. Nonetheless, we have to get that screw out of there, and it's being a bit tricky. But yeah, we're almost inside. For now, let's flip this machine over, the screws are out, and the top should lift away quite nicely. I've got to be honest, I really do love the design of the ST. Those sloped function keys look really beautiful. Now I seem to... have I missed a screw, or is it just sticking on the drive? It's possible it's just sticking on the drive. Nevertheless, let's check. Have a good study. I suspect it's just sticking. Sure enough, with a little determination and a fingernail under the right spot, up comes the wedge-shaped top and reveals a perfectly intact interior. There's shielding everywhere. Not bad. Not bad at all, Atari. So our first job is to remove that keyboard. This is actually fairly easy. So to remove the keyboard, all we have to do is lift it and keep an eye on the right hand side. You'll find a little cable underneath. You can pull that away from the motherboard and yeah, that's it. The keyboard is away and free. No worrisome membranes there. Yay. Next up, we need to take out this bit of shielding. Once this is gone, we have access to the floppy drive, so we can unscrew it and unplug it from the board. It should come away quite easily then. With the shielding gone, it's literally just unplug. Now it's on to the main shielding, and this is where the fun generally begins. This machine is untouched, so not only have I got to take these screws out, but there are metal tabs around there as well. Now the top case there, you can see, is particularly important. It protects you from the power supply. Atari power supplies are interesting beasts, and if I'm honest, I'm not a fan of them, especially because without that shield on, if you're working on the machine, it's very easy to try and switch that on and electrocute yourself. So be very, very careful when working around Atari ST power supplies. It is very easy to hurt yourself, and if you're not confident, ask someone who is. To remove these metal tabs, it's just a matter of twisting with the pliers and they should just lift out. It's not going to be easy, but they will lift away. And there's our power supply, and you can see the problem I mean. Now it's just plugged into the board there, and then there are 4 screws that keep it in place. And again, it becomes very difficult to get these things out as well, especially with the shielding in place, as I'm about to find out. Yes, rather than just taking the power supply out, the whole machine lifts away and we can remove the bottom case and put it somewhere safe. Next up, well, we've got to remove that top shield and then the bottom one. This Atari is made, just like other Ataris, really well. With the top shield removed, you can see our machine, and I already see our first problem. Our memory, which we need to check with an oscilloscope, is hidden under the power supply, so I'm going to have to work out a way to get around that. Other than that, there's our CPU, I think, and our RAM. One of these 32 chips is not like the other, and it's all MT RAM, so yay that. MT RAM is notorious for breaking. It's not the greatest stuff, and we'll have to work it out. In the corner we have our ROM slots, Now this is interesting. My earlier STs have 6 ROMs. They've got it down to just 2 with this model, which is nice. And in here, the video shifter. God, I hope nothing's wrong in there. Yikes, that's a lot of stuff going on in there. Right, okay, so the biggest problem with working on this particular Atari ST is the memory is all hidden under the power supply. And the power supply is very live, so you don't really want to touch it, and I don't want to fold it over on the board. So what I'm going to do is something incredibly janky, but it should work, okay? So this happens to be an old cable I have lying around that I can't remember what I made it for, but it's around and it's quite useful because I can just plug that into here. With that in there, I can then come to this one and do this. So we're going to go 1 and use this wonderful orange wire to connect up this connector to our other one. Look, I'm not going to lie to you, it's janky, okay? It's very janky. In fact, I think it could actually be a little shorter and janky. Oh, well, that's unexpected. Okay. There. Again, a little shorter. I may have oversized these. So that's our 6 cables, and hopefully they work. And what we're going to do, we're going to get our end of our connector here and match them up. So there. This one here. Again, I think I can clip these off. They are a little longer than I wanted. I'll find those in a minute. See, and they do come out, which is why it's janky, and we do not recommend this. But yeah, come back and we will have that wired up and then ready to go. Yes, despite the severe jankiness, the machine does boot back into Gem with no problem. Now, let's get the scope out and see if we can work out what's going on with these RAM chips. Right, okay, so we have it now all connected up. I've checked the connections. It's all working fine, I hope. What I'm going to do now, I have the power supply over there. It is switched on, but it is switched off at a plug at the top. That way I want to make sure it's as isolated as possible from me and anything else that could cause harm. I do not want to be touching this thing when it's on because it will shock you. And again, ask me how I know. Not my favorite power supply to work on, honestly. But let's switch it on and let's start scoping out our pins. We need to look for pin 14, which is going to be the data out, and hopefully we can find our dodgy chip. Let's start. And it's at this point I discover I don't have any of my oscilloscope footage. For some reason that's all missing, and the stuff I do have doesn't fit. And on top of that, the footage I have of me scoping out the pins individually, going round and round in circles using the Atari Diagnostic cart, all gone. I have no idea what happened to it. It's not on my recording device. I don't know what to say. So honestly though, you're not really missing much, because if I'm truthful, I felt like I was going round in circles. However, with the Atari Diagnostic card, I eventually did come up with a theory, and I marked out 6 chips which may be faulty. So when we pick the action back up, you'll see that I have removed said chips, socketed the board, and then put the chips back in, ready to be tested and individually removed, so we can find out which one really was the culprit, or if it's more than one. Once again, sorry, it's just what an idiot. Okay, so it's been a few days and I've managed to socket the RAM. Bit of a pain in the neck, but what I've done, I've taken 6 chips I think are faulty, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to replace each individual piece and see if we actually get any difference in the RAM test. So let's start by popping out the first one here, U5. There we go. I've got a little bag of Atari RAM chips somewhere. I put down and lost. Oh, there they are. Okay. And let's see. Now these were taken from a working ST, so hopefully they'll be okay. But let's see how we get. So what follows is me taking individual chips out, placing a new RAM chip in there, hoping that works, running a RAM test with a diagnostic cart, watching it fail, and then moving on to the next chip. This continues until eventually I find the culprit, and as you'd expect, and as always seems to be the case, it's the last chip in the board that you need to change. Yes, that final chip I changed there, that's our culprit. And look how happy I am. Okay folks, it's progress. It's passed. The machine is fixed. It was this RAM chip here, just the one. Fantastic. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to take that RAM chip out, test all the other RAM chips I took out to make sure it's okay, because you can always save those for later. Yeah, I will show you the RAM test. You can see it passing in a moment. With the RAM test on its way to passing with a full 1 megabyte, it's time to hear from our sponsor today, PCBWay. We all know that PCBWay make fantastic PCB boards, starting from just $5, and include things like, well, getting a replacement board for this old ZX Spectrum. What happens if your 3D printer isn't up to the task? Or you're having a little trouble with your CNC machine? Then look no further than PCBWay. In fact, if you can design it, PCBWay can help make it a reality. PCBWay, way more than just PCBs. For more information, check out the link in the description below. With the machine ready to go back together, I discover in horror that somehow the top case has cracked or broken while it's been in storage. It's not quite a disaster, but it is only held on by one single sprue, so we're going to have to be very careful and glue that back together before this case is ready to be used again. So let's start with that, and I hand over to my learner itself to explain what I'm going to do. How about I'm going to use this model glue. Now this is plastic cement. It'll bond these surfaces better. It's way better than super glue, but to make sure I'll be taking extra steps. But first, let's get this glued in. Looks like I've got one nasty surprise. I think the top is broken off it. Hang on, I'm going to use this. See if we can get in there. Of course we can't. At least let's. Now, with this stuff, less is definitely more. So, start in this corner, shall we? As I go on, I use the same technique for each side, trying to gently drizzle the glue onto where I need it to stick, hoping that it'll hold everything together. The thing is, these cases are incredibly fragile, and it is very easy to break them because they are only held into place very carefully. If this doesn't work, I'm going to have to think of something else, essentially. But for now, this looks like it should hold. Now this center section, that's going to be particularly tricky. As you can see, it's really thin, but I think there's enough plastic there for it to grip to. Likewise for this one up here. To help with this section here, I'm just going to put in this little extra piece of wood with some all-purpose glue to act as a kind of splint. All-purpose glue will pretty much stick anything to anything, so I'm really hoping that if we just drop that in there, it can help keep the back more or less intact. I'll do the same over there with some smaller pieces. Here's some I prepared earlier. I'm just going to put that around the crack. Well, there it is. The machine is back together and working. Except it's not. Now, the memory fault on this machine is actually fixed. And I was able to do that Well, now in theory I was able to do that using my oscilloscope and various RAM tests, but honestly I kind of feel like I got lucky. What I need to do really is to get a serial connection and output that to terminal to another machine, because I'm not sure that I got that last RAM chip based on the probing I did. I think I just got lucky. So there's always more to learn. The other thing is that while this machine is back working, this mouse doesn't work properly. It seems that it'll only go left or right, not up and down. And checking with another mouse, well, that one only goes left and right and up, regardless of what I'm doing. So I suspect that the mounts on the keyboard need resoldering. That's a common problem, apparently. More seriously though, is that some games do not load on this machine, despite the fact it's fully working, and I've had Yart here, or yet another Atari RAM test running for quite some time. It's passed 16 tests, there are 0 errors, and yet some games give me the indication that there is still problems with the RAM. Some won't load, some will give me 3 bombs, some will actually load up and then give me graphical glitches that look for all the world like there is still a RAM problem. So I'm afraid this machine is not quite finished yet. So there will be a part 2 where I will clean up this mouse, fix it, clean up this. I think that needs a bit of retro writing, don't you? And yeah, you can join me for that at a later date. All I have to say now is I say thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I enjoyed making it, as always. And yep, down below there's the usual socials. And all I've got left to say is, when it comes to old computers like this €30 Atari ST, remember to reuse, recycle, rediscover, because you never know. The Atari ST may live again. My name is Jesby. This has been my tech department. Cheers.